McDonald's alone spends $2.5 billion in television advertising. On the other side of things, Burger King gives $1.5 billion each year to advertising their junk food. At the same time, KFC gives $900 million a year to advertise their junk food. And finally, the Fruit and Vegetable Association of America spends $14 million in advertising a year. We see that children today are influenced by a number of things. And the first and foremost is media and television. And we see that right now in the present, children are incentivized and at the same time are influenced to go out and eat junk food and become unhealthy. And this is the exact grounds that here on Side Proposition today we stand on. This resolution that has fallen before us today, ladies and gentlemen, is this House believes that physical education should only be an option for students over the age of 18. And on this side of the House today, we really firmly support it. We believe that students under the age of 18 should be forced to take classes while in high school about physical education. We really believe that these classes as a whole would benefit them along in the long run, which is the exact which is the exact basis that we're going to be running on today on Sign Opposition. No, thank you. Now, which is really why we're going to be offering on the team line. Teaching health should be top shelf, and we really need to prove to you one major thing to really properly convince you of our stance. And that's that physical education should be mandatory in the same way that academic studies are mandatory. No, thank you. Now, in order to really properly convince you of our stance today, we need to prove to you a couple things. But before I show you how we're going to be proving any of this to you today, I'd like to take a look at today's resolution and define a few terms in order to really crystallize what we're going to be debating about today. So first off, I'd like to label the House as really any sort of Western liberal democracy. Countries where first world education is already apparent as well as mandatory for youth up to a certain age. Beyond this, we see that this resolution really says the only people who should be allowed to choose whether they want education are the people that are over the age of 18 and have already actually learned about physical education through high school. So under 18s who are still in the education system should be required to learn about physical health. Okay, so what is physical education? What are we talking about here? Well, this could either be the conventional gym class where people run around and get very sweaty, but on top of this, we say that it could also be the sort of nutritional education where you teach kids about foods and you teach them about their general health and well-being. Okay, so what's the need? Why do we need to do this? Well, we see that in countries like the United States that really has a 22.5% obesity rate or death by obesity rate. And countries like the United Kingdom that has a 21.5% death by obesity rate. This resolution is really fundamentally mandatory because the people that are being hurt the most are the children. And this is the exact basis that we're going to be showing you down the line today on Side Proposition. No, thank you. Now, we've come up with 3 points that we're going to present to you over the course of today's debate. The first is that of the responsibility of the government to teach children about healthy living. And the second point is about the effectiveness of the education about healthy living. And the third point, which my partner Jacob is going to be presenting to you, is really about the benefits to the individual's education as a whole. Okay, so let's take a look at our first point today, which is that of the responsibility. And really what I'm going to be proving to you through this point is that the government as well as the education system have a duty to teach children about nutrition. Okay, so let's take a look at the stats.
Point of information, sir.
Yes.
This is precisely why Team Opposition stands for physical education, regardless of whether a student is below or above the age of 18 years.
We see that over the age of 18 years, people have a fundamental right to choose whether or not they want to live healthy or choose whether or not they want to live poorly. I mean, that's why we don't ban cigarettes for everyone, right? And that the fact of the matter is, people need to, once you hit a certain age, you have the right to choose whether or not you want to be fundamentally healthy or not. So moving on, let's take a look at the status quo. Why do we force children to learn about math? Why do we force them to learn how to read? Well, because we believe that'll help them later on in life. I mean, sure, they might not want to do it, they might not want to learn about math, but, I mean, we teach it anyway. Why do we teach it anyway? Well, because it benefits them in the long run. But see, the exact same principle applies when we look to healthy living. 22.5%, no thank you, of all deaths in the United States are directly related to obesity. 21.5% of all deaths in the United Kingdom, I'll take you in a moment, are directly related to obesity. Yet at the same time, what we see is that we have really no way to counteract these measures. In the same way that we teach kids about math because it benefits in the future, we need to teach them about the benefit because it benefits in the long term. We need to teach them about healthy living because at the same time they'll be able to benefit from it in the long term and have a longer life expectancy in the long term. Yes.
It's exactly because of these benefits that you talk about. That's why we want to extend physical education to people above the age of 18 as well.
Yes, but at the same time, we see that people are paying for university education. So, I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, you have to pay for education, university education, so I'm going to force you to do whatever I want you to do specifically. No, this really is not the case. And we see that beyond this. Once more, I've already answered your question precisely. We don't force people to be healthy once they hit a certain age, which is why we don't ban cigarettes. So, we see in the same way we teach kids about that because it benefits them in the long term, we need to teach them about healthy living because it benefits them in the long term, because it lengthens their life expectancy and it benefits them in the future by lowering the rate of obesity and their chance of contracting diabetes, obesity, whatever. Okay, so now that I've really proven to you that it's the government's responsibility, as well as the education system's responsibility, to teach children about to teach kids specifically about why they need to live a healthy life. Let's take a look at my second point, which is really about the effectiveness of this resolution. I'm really going to be proving to you that education is the best way to stop obesity as a whole. So in order to do this, I'm going to be looking at this really through two angles. I'm going to be showing you what the benefit of doing direct physical activity through things such as gym class are, as well as the angle of just general nutritional education, what to eat, how to eat it, how to live a healthier life. Specifically the first angle. Okay, that for a direct physical activity. So what do we do in the gym classes? Well, we run, we jump, we sweat, and we just generally lose weight, and we strengthen our hearts through cardiovascular research. We play sports. We see that by taking kids at a young age and giving them direct influence to sports or to some sort of physical activity, they're more likely to go on later on in their life and continue that very same sport and continue running, continue playing soccer, continue playing basketball. No, thank you, and they take this into the long term and continue strengthening their hearts, continue strengthening their body, and continue making themselves more and more healthy. We see that beyond this, this would actually help them much later on in life. We see as a senior, if you're still regularly playing some sort of a sport, if you're still regularly doing some sort of physical activity, no, thank you. You're going to have a far healthier heart because you're doing this on a regular basis and you're strengthening your body on a regular basis. So our second angle today, that of nutritional education. So really what I'm going to be proving to you through there are a lot of outside influences that children are in fact exposed to. I mean, I've given you all the statistics about television. I've told you that McDonald's spends $2 billion a year, so I'm not really going to go over that. But what we can see is that the amount of money that companies spend, and international companies, and companies that endorse junk food, and their product is junk food, spend on influencing youth and forcing them to eat their food is far outweighed. I mean, it far outweighs the positive benefit, the positive influences such as what the Food and Vegetable Association of America are trying to do. It far outweighs them. So how do we counteract this sort of negative education? How do we take them, or how do we give them the knowledge to make a more educated decision? How do we make it so they don't know only one side of things, that junk food, Burger King is delicious, and you need to eat it. Well, what we do is we tell them the exact effects on their health. We tell them that it makes them fatter. We tell them that it gives them a weaker heart. We tell them that it gives them a weaker brain. And at the same time, we tell them that it shortens their life expectancy as a whole. This way they can make a far more educated decision on whether or not they want to eat that Mars bar, whether or not they want to go out and eat a KFC. And because of this, and because we need to put physical education on the top shelf, this side of the house is more than
Right, the House thanks Burbot. The House calls upon Sean Lee to open the opposition sentence. Thank you, Chair.
we see in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen, is a side proposition that's fundamentally misunderstood today's motion. They, ladies and gentlemen, in their substantive, talked about how talk about the benefits of PE education, talk about the benefits of how it actually allows students to be more healthy. We on the side opposition, ladies and gentlemen, we say we stand for compulsory PE education from primary to tertiary education. They have not fulfilled their burden of proof, ladies and gentlemen, because their burden of proof is to tell us why physical education does not apply to people above the age of 18. Why specifically people above the age of 18, ladies and gentlemen? They talked about the benefits, they talked about the harms that fast food brings and how we need to educate people against those harms. We entirely agree with their analysis, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, we say that people above the age of 18 are more susceptible to these harms. That is why we need physical education to ensure that they maintain a healthy body, to ensure, ladies and gentlemen, that these harms do not apply to them. No, thank you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, having said that they've conceded almost entirely the debate to us, ladies and gentlemen, no, thank you, sir, they forwarded two lines of logic to us. They said, ladies and gentlemen, that first of all, above the age of 18, you have a choice of whether or not you want to pick up physical education. Our response to this, first of all, is the question, why, ladies and gentlemen, why does this right specifically suddenly appear when you're at the age of 18? But, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring this argument one step further. The fact of the matter is that the government imposes things on students, no thank you sir, most of the time, things such as compulsory education, things such as compulsory community involvement service projects. We say, ladies and gentlemen, that the state has the interest of the students at heart, and it imposes things, no thank you sir, on students all the time. Second of all, their second line of logic to us is this, that because you are paying for your education, therefore you have the choice of what you want to take. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental premise that you pay for most of your education is wrong because a lot of education is subsidized. Second of all, ladies and gentlemen, we say that when you pay for education, you're not paying for absolute discretion on what you want to learn or what you want to do. Instead, ladies and gentlemen, you pay for better education. And we say that physical education is an integral part in allowing students to receive better education. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, we will make physical education compulsory under our model. Having dealt with all the rebuttals that they brought up, let me now deal with the model that side opposition is proposing. Side opposition will make it compulsory for students of all ages to pick up physical education from the primary to tertiary education. And under our model, tertiary education, no thank you sir, will include educational institutions for those above the age of 18. And under this includes universities, polytechnics, vocational institutes. And under our model, it's not just physical activities that we want to teach students. We also want to talk about theoretical knowledge, such as health management, teaching people above the age of 18, and of all ages, no thank you sir, about the nutritional value, about how they can get food cheaply. Second of all, fitness modules, about how they can exercise different muscle groups, how to train their body properly. Third of all, about sports science and psychology, on how they can plan exercise regimens better. And we say that we'll go into greater depth for students above the age of 18, so that they can learn more through our model. Then, ladies and gentlemen, under our model, we also provide a better variety of sports, a wider variety of sports they can take. Things such as, no thank you sir, mountain climbing, hiking, cycling, and all this, no thank you sir, all this will be done on a weekly basis, and this will be fitted into students' timetable. Let me move on to my case division for today. Hold on for a moment, sir. As the first speaker, we're talking to you about how physical education for students, not just above the age of 18, but for all students, upholds the principles of education. And my second speaker will be talking to you about how our model democratizes collegiate sports. But before that, yes?
Now, when we see that in a private institution, such as a university, the government does not have any say or input into what the private sector does. Therefore, how can we impose what this education is inside a private institution?
Thank you, sir. Our response to this is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. The government's role is to ensure that students receive the best education possible. And that's why we have things such as imposed syllabus or universities. So we say, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that the government has the responsibility to ensure that students receive the best education possible, and physical education is an integral part of ensuring that our students grow up the best that they can be. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on to my substantive on how our model upholds the principles and purpose of education. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of education? The premise of this argument is that education is meant to prepare students for the workforce and for adult life. And we believe that tertiary education in particular institutes exist for the sole purpose of equipping students with the skills required for life. We give you the examples of American liberal arts colleges, where physical education is compulsory, where, ladies and gentlemen, there's emphasis on more well-rounded education to prepare people for life in general. Then let me move on, no thank you sir, to my second question, on why should education integrate this curriculum of physical education. Having understood the purposes of education being to prepare people for life, physical education is important because, ladies and gentlemen, simply a healthy person is better for society, is better for the workforce. We say it's been scientifically proven that health brings benefits such as increased well-being, increased image, increased self-confidence, increased focus, increased attention spans. And we say that a study done by Singapore's Institute of Health has showed that students who are fit had higher test averages. And we say, ladies and gentlemen, that we want to extend all these benefits to those above the age of 18 as well, because we believe that this is crucial for them. Then, ladies and gentlemen, let's ask ourselves, how does physical education achieve these aims that I talked to you about just now? First of all, we say that physical education equips students with the skill sets they need to manage their health. And it inculcates fitness as an important part of one's health. In addition to that, it actually habitualizes good health habits, ladies and gentlemen, such as eating well, exercising properly. Second of all, we say that our model generates interest among youth for sports. We expose them under our model to a variety of sports, no thank you sir. And we go into depth into fitness, about the benefits of keeping good health, negative consequences of bad health, as well as to increase the interest, ladies and gentlemen, for them to maintain their health. No thank you sir. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the crucial question in today's debate. Why is it that we want to extend our model to people above the age of 18 as well? We say that people above the age of 18, no thank you sir, is particularly vulnerable to bad lifestyles. Why is this so? No thank you sir. First of all, that they are living on their own without their parents' influence to actually counteract their lifestyles. We say therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that they're less likely to maintain good health. And ladies and gentlemen, we say that they turn more likely to things such as instant noodles, McDonald's, unhealthy food. We give you an example in Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, where National University of Singapore's 7-Eleven store reported a disproportionate 68% of revenue coming from food such as instant noodles and potato chips. So clearly, ladies and gentlemen, we say that within universities there exists a culture of bad health, ladies and gentlemen. And we say that this culture of bad health would perpetuate itself when students have freedom to do whatever they want. It's a culture of drugs, alcohol, not sleeping in universities. And we say that when youth enter into these institutes, it makes them more susceptible to being immersed in such an environment, harmful environment to themselves, ladies and gentlemen. And we on site opposition believe that it's our responsibility to ensure that these harms do not come to people above the age of 18. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, under our model, we will apply compulsory physical education to those from primary education all the way to tertiary education. We help kids. We save kids, ladies and gentlemen. Please walk with outside of the house.
Right, the House thanks Sean Lee. The House now calls upon Jacob to continue the proposition's case. Thank you.
Side proposition and side opposition do strongly agree on one fact today. We need to do something about the issue of a lack of the attention paid to health in our society. However, what side opposition clearly misunderstands is the way that the world works on two main grounds. The first is that they plan to impose in their model that on private institutions, the way that they should teach, what they should teach to the students, and how they should run their business. Ladies and gentlemen, we would see that this is not the way that the world works. You can't just simply impose on a private institution, such as a university, this is how you have to instruct your students. The reason that universities are independent from government institutions is because they run their own curriculum, because they do their own research, because they've shown their own standard of how to teach students. You cannot simply impose on a university how to instruct. Now, if a university does deem that it is useful to teach physical education to students, that is their own prerogative. However, you cannot force universities to do this, and that is what side opposition clearly misunderstands and why their model concretely falls. Now, not at this time. What we would also say is that they've been talking about how we need to teach health to the university students who are more susceptible to the harms than younger students. But really, let's examine this for a minute. Why are these university students more susceptible to these harms than younger students? We would say that this is only because they have a more disposable income and because they have not learned the lessons that they need to have in order to make the correct decisions. Not at this time. We would say that the disposable income really doesn't have any point whatsoever, but we would see that the reason that they make these bad decisions is because they do not have the education. But if under our system we impose this education upon them at a younger age, they would get this mentality. We cannot compare the university students that we have in this rotten system to the university students that would be a product of the better system that we are putting forward. That's what side opposition misunderstands. They run on the basis that university students will still be susceptible to the harms when this is not the case. Mr. Speaker, if they already know this knowledge from when they were taught as students, then they would not have the same harms when they're older. So really this point of the more susceptible university student harms does not stand. And with this, we see that most of the case on side opposition falls today, because I've already conceded to my partner's first point, that of the responsibility of the government. We would say that the government clearly does have a responsibility to teach these health lessons to these students. However, what we would say is that teaching them the students at a younger age is adequate and our responsibility to teach, but once they are adults, they have the right to choose what they will be learning, and the universities have a right to choose what they will be teaching. And side opposition or the government does not have a right to impede on either. So what we would say is my partner's points of responsibility would stand, and the point of effectiveness really stands quite strong in the face of the fact that students will learn this at a younger age, and this will continue throughout the rest of their life in this fashion. This is one thing that side opposition clearly ignores. It's a continuous lesson that they've built with their morals at a young age. Do not suddenly ditch this once they get to university. If we can incorporate these lessons at a younger age in the secondary schools, in the primary schools, this becomes ingrained within the student, and this will become ingrained in our future society. And that's why we strongly propose this resolution on the basis of responsibility and on the basis of effectiveness. My partner's points still definitely stand. And side opposition's points, let's take a look at them for just a brief minute, because we only have to when we realize that the first point on the physical education point needs to be taught to tertiary students. I've already strongly brought that down. When we look at what they signposted that their second point would be, that of democratizing collegiate sports, they never talked about this. Do you know any more about how this would democratize collegiate sports? Because side proposition clearly does not. And if side opposition was not prepared to teach this point, it shows that they do not have a point in that either. So we can see that in the one point that they have brought forward, it does not stand. And that is why side proposition and side opposition clearly are on separate sides, and we are on the stronger one. Would you not agree?
In countries like the United States, they do have compulsory physical education below the age of 18, yet they still have a huge problem with unhealthiness among their populace. Prove to us why this doesn't show that physical education should be extended.
We see that this does not have a very strong point in the basis that they stopped teaching physical education in most schools at the grade 9 or 10 level. We see that also students are not able to understand most of the nutrition and most of the harder concepts that are harder to grasp about learning this nutrition and the health side to life. When you have to understand the way that the body, not at this time. When you have to understand how the body functions, when you have to understand what the body needs to live a healthy life, when you need to understand these complex concepts that side opposition was bringing forward, that of the psychology of an athlete, this, that, and the other, a grade 2 student is not able to understand this. Grade 7 students are not really able to understand this, which is why we need to make it proportional to what they're able to learn. If we teach this all the way throughout high school, all the way till the end of the 18th year, we understand and we strongly propose that this is enough, and this is exactly what the students need. Beyond this, we are impeding on the choice of universities and of other collegiate, students. So now that I've really rebutted side opposition's case, I'd like to get into the final constructive point for side proposition today, which is the benefits to the individual. And I'll be looking at a short actual analysis of the types of youth that would benefit from this resolution. First, I'll be talking about how a healthy body leads to a healthy mind. Second off, I'll be talking about how it's more likely, this leads to students to be more likely to stay in school, and also how it leads students to into a path where they'll stay away from bad behavior. Let's get right into it, not at this time. We would see that any student that were to participate in physical education all the way up to the 18th year would gain benefits from this resolution in the fact that they gain a healthy body from physical education, and from that they get a healthy mind. It's really not hard to understand. The mind is part of the body. When the body is healthy through physical education, the mind benefits as well. The students are better able to focus on their studies, they're better able to learn, they're better able to contribute to society, or to their studies rather. We would say that all students that participate in this really do have a strata benefit. However, what we would say is that extracurricular activities open youth up to a wide variety of perspectives, not at this time. We would say that youth who have the opportunity to get into extracurriculars have their minds opened up and their horizons broadened. We would say it's similar to like coming across a fruit tray. I'll take you in a moment. It's similar to coming across a fruit tray. We would see that there are kiwis, there are strawberries, apples, oranges. Now you try the kiwi, you may not like it. You try the strawberry, you may not like it. You've come to the apple. You found something that you like, that you enjoy, you can now start having apples more often. We would say that this is the same way with sports. They don't like hockey, and that's okay. They don't like tennis, that's okay. They come to basketball, they gain a new extracurricular activity from which they can learn. Would you not agree?
If you believe that PE below the age of 18 is important, would you impose it in private institutions?
That is not my prerogative, and that is not the House's prerogative today, ladies and gentlemen. It is not our place to impose on private institutions what they teach. Of course we would recommend it. Of course we would say that it can have benefits. We're not denying that there's benefits to learning about health. However, what we're saying is we do not have the place to impose it on these private institutions. You need to understand this to continue with the debate today inside opposition. We would say that in this resolution, when students have the opportunity to learn about extracurricular activities, they have a wide variety of sports and whatnot that they can learn from. They also have the lessons that they can learn from these sports. They have the responsibility, they have the discipline, they have the commitment. However, they also have this idea of learning to play by the rules. And when we get to this third point, that of the more likely to stay away from bad behavior as something they would learn from physical education, we would say that any student can benefit from this, whether they are in sports or not. Because when you learn to play by the rules, when you learn to have commitment, responsibility, and discipline, you stay away from the bad deeds in society. We're talking about students that are likely to participate in youth crime. We're talking about students that are likely to participate in drugs and alcohol. They're the bad things in society because they do not have the morals and principles to decide and learn otherwise. We would say that teaching physical education and the sports that come with this will teach them principles and morals that they can take on throughout their life. They'll remain consistent for them. So this doesn't just stop when they're throughout high school. We would say that this physical education and this learning helps them throughout the world and on with their lives, which is why we unite on the case line today that teaching health remains top shelf, and it should be this way in society. My partner's points of responsibility and effectiveness do strongly stand, and the benefits to the individual and society as a whole really need to be considered and understood by side opposition today, and how imposing on secondary institutions is not the way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.